Jesus says some very strange and wonderful things in this scripture today. He says that we are not of this world. We are in this world, but we're not of this world. So I have to ask you, just think for a minute. Have you ever felt that way? That you just, I can remember thinking, what am I doing here? I don't ever feel that way in this place, because you're all so wonderful. But I was an only child, and I moved around a lot and went to different schools and would find myself in the midst of people I had never met before. And even sometimes when it's people that are your own family, your own relatives, and you're with them, sometimes you say, what am I doing here? Who are these people? I think most people have felt that at some time. And it's okay. And so Jesus is saying that we're in this world, but we're not exactly of this world, because somehow through him we've changed. And that might be a part of it sometimes. Sometimes it's just that we're new somewhere, or something's changed, or we're in a particular kind of a mood. But as we settle into our Christianity, we begin to realize that everything that we're at least trying to do is pretty much counterculture. Counterculture. It's not that we're against the culture, it's just that there are many things that are different. For example, wouldn't you think that most of the time the idea about money is that you should accumulate it? Let's get money. And if it isn't money, it may be things that money buys. If I had a most beautiful house, then I would be happier, or a better car, or a better situation. Things that are related to finances are surely going to solve all of our problems, and then we'll be happy. Well, not even thinking about the happiness part of it, why isn't that the way we as Christians, at least our goal is not to think that way? Our goal is that money is to be used for those in need, not for our own greed. That doesn't mean that if we need something we don't get it. We have to get what we need to some degree, but that it's not just about us personally, it's about everybody, or those that are at least God has brought into our face. If someone's standing in front of you in need, it's time to think about it a different way. So we become counterculture when we are like that. Now the next thing, of course, is success is the measure of a man or a woman. I didn't want success, I wanted fame. True confessions. Church is the place to confess, isn't it? Well, there wasn't anything terribly wrong with what I wanted. I just had the idea. I don't think I've ever told this to anybody, so I may as well tell it to everybody at the same time. That when I was about maybe 15 or 16, Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada, and I would see on television people meeting Trudeau, and they had to be very important to meet him. And I thought, what could I do in my life that I would be able to meet Trudeau on an equal basis? I'm thinking like this when I'm 15. I don't know why. What would I have to be? Well, I couldn't go to college, university, because there were no student loans, and my parents didn't have the money for it, and so that wasn't going to be, it wasn't going to go through education. And I kept trying to figure out what I could do, and came to the conclusion that if I became a famous opera singer, I could be invited to a party and I could meet Trudeau on an equal basis, because he wouldn't know how to sing. What a ridiculous reason to become a singer. Of course I love music, and of course, you know, I became a singer, and I don't know what happened to him. He passed away eventually, and now there's another Trudeau, so I still have a chance. But fame as a goal, you know, is a pretty ridiculous thing, really. Because if everybody loves you, it doesn't mean that anybody loves you. And it's fleeting. And I can give you the classic example from people that I know of, and there was a famous singer named John McCormick, whose holy name, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. I see Dorothy's nodding her head. She knows who he was. He was so famous that the world was at his feet. And he became a multimillionaire, made the first early recordings. He sang night after night to 7,000 people with no microphone. He was the greatest. The world worshipped and adored him. And he was a religious man, and he gave his money away to the poor. He was the best guy in the world. Who knows how many people know his name? Well, I know because my husband was older than me, and Dorothy knows, and everybody else. Anybody else? Well, this is Canada. Maybe a few of you do. Yeah, but in the rest of the world, by the way, if you want to hear him sing, come to my house. I think he lives at my house, but anyway, fame is fleeting. He actually lost his fame to some degree, even while he was alive, and died at 61, and now, 70 years later, gone. Fame, and the people that we do remember that are famous from our memory, from the things that have been passed down, aren't even necessarily the things that person would want to be known for. Or maybe it isn't what they did, somebody else did it, you know? Because as the memories are passed down, things change and people don't remember the same way. So fame is a useless thing, really, pretty much. I've signed autographs, so I know, you know. Instead of fame, what we want is to be of service. That's the Christian ideal. Who do we look up to ideally? You know, Mother Teresa or someone in our church who starts the breakfast program. These are the people that we revere. So we're counterculture in that respect. Money, fame and success, and other things. Another thing that we want, that the world tells us that we should seek, is power. If we have power over other people, we're not going to be vulnerable. The world says we don't want to be vulnerable. We want to be able to be self-contained and not needing anybody and not needing anything, and that's what the world will tell us. And as Christians, we have as our example Jesus. Jesus, who chooses, as a part of God, to be born into the world as what? An infant. What is more helpless than a newborn infant? God as an infant. God allowing himself to be in the hands of human beings, and you know how we do things, not well most of the time. And then, at the end of his life, Jesus' life, to be crucified as a common criminal. How helpless and vulnerable is that? So God is showing us, look at this. And then we can say, well, I guess that maybe I didn't really want to seek after power after all. I want to allow myself to allow others to care for me as I do for others. And so the world probably thinks we're crazy. But Jesus goes far enough to say the world will hate you. That's a pretty strong word, isn't it? And it isn't used that much in the Bible. Hate, hate, hate. But the world doesn't hate us. Maybe we say, well, we're doing okay in the world. They don't hate us. But we are different. Even as Anglicans, very acceptable. Mainline, very acceptable. And pretty much liberal people that are... And we're in Canada, so things here seem to be so nice, you know. But we are still going counterculture all the time. Now, the next thing Jesus talks about is the evil one. And he doesn't say, dear God, please take evil away from these people so they don't have to deal with it. Because he knows that we're in the world. His disciples were still in the world, and we're still in the world. Now, speaking of Canada, you know, I was in the U.S. for 25 years, and now I'm back in Canada, and I feel safe in Canada. I've got this crazy idea that bad things don't happen in Canada, because we see what happens in the world, don't we? We've seen it. I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to talk about 9/11. Some people who decided for religious reasons, because they didn't understand their religion, that they were going to kill 3,000 innocent people. That is a sign of the existence of the evil one, whatever way you want to put it. And now, every time we turn the television on, people are being beheaded. I don't need to go into the list. You know the list. We try to turn it off and get away from it. But just as a little reminder that in the Niagara region, we've had some pretty serious evil happening too. I don't need to tell you that. So I'll just say that we all remember that there was a couple that did something very, very terrible to some young women. And that was so evil that nobody would ever buy their house. So the house had to be torn down. That's how evil it was. That was the presence of evil. And then there was a young man who just wanted to sell his truck and went off with a couple of guys to sell his truck. And suddenly he was no more. That's the presence of evil. There was another man who took the name, I don't like to say their names, but he took the name of a very respectable winery. You know who that was? Starts with an M. And he murdered people. And these things are happening a little too close to home. Evil is real, and we don't want to think about it. And Jesus says that we can be protected. That doesn't mean that we're not going to ever get hurt, but that we're protected by God so that we can go into the world and function. Because otherwise we'd just go crawl back into our room, wouldn't we, if we thought about it too much. I know also that evil is real because I tend to, when I had my psychological report, they said, Doreen sees the world through rose-colored glasses. You know what that means? That means that I don't see the evil. I just look at the good. Well, isn't that nice? But it isn't true, of course. I didn't lie to them. I don't know why they got that idea. But I have, in the course of my ministry, and I don't know about Martha because we haven't discussed it, but I've had at least 3 people come in, kind of like for counseling or just to talk to me, who have said they were very aware of the presence of evil for various reasons, and that it was a palpable presence. They said, I didn't see a person standing there, but I could feel it, and sometimes it would be a woman who was molested by a parent or something, but it might be one person had walked in on a situation where murder had taken place and said he could feel it in the room. So it's real, but we have to live in this world, and we don't want to think about it, but we need to know that part that Jesus said, that we're protected. Maybe we'll get hurt, but we're going to be protected. We're safe with God. We're always safe with God. So that's a part of our living in this world. Those things that I talked about before and this. Now then he says, and I like my version from the New Revised Standard Version says that Jesus prays that they all may be one as we are one. And the reading said that we all may be united. Now, when a husband and wife get married, they are united. In other words, they're going to be a team. That's the way I see the word united. But when you're going to be one, or as one, that's a little bit different. Every passage of the Bible has many translations, and they're all, the ones that we deal with are all accurate, but they're not always identical. And so that line, that they all may be one, happens to be the major motto of my denomination, the United Church of Christ in the United States, which is kind of like the United Church of Canada, a little bit different. And they like that they all may be one. Kind of like here you have the oldest church with the youngest ideas. Well, that's your local, what do you call it, a motto? A motto, or logo or something. Yeah. So in the United Church of Christ, it's that they all may be one. Not that they're trying to bring in all the denominations to their denomination, but just that we would understand that even though people are Christian over here and over there, Catholic, Protestant, Pentecostal, whatever they are, that in these things we're one, that we're united, that we're a part of each other, that we are home with each other, no matter what church we go to. Now in China, by the way, I was in China for 4 years working for the church. The church that's approved, there are 2 churches, the church that's approved by the government and the one that's not approved by the government. And I was in the approved one. That's how I got my visa to get in. and was sent by my denomination there, and discovered something amazing that you may not have heard before, and that is that well, they got very upset with all missionaries in about 1949, and they kicked them all out. They said they're bringing their Western culture along with their religion. And that was probably true, we were, you know. But so they decided, yes, we're going to have the church, the Protestant church, but it's going to be not non-denominational, but, and I love this, post-denominational. So in China, they're very proud that the church is post-denominational, meaning after denominationalism, now we have a church that is all one. And yet, if you go to worship in them, they're similar, but you can tell which ones were Anglican. St. Paul's in Nanjing was Anglican, for sure, because of the way that the liturgy goes. And they're similar, but they're slightly different ways of worshiping. Different ways of worshiping are not important. What's really important are those basics that we're there to love each other, to care for others, and to be selfless, and to follow Christ. And then he said that their joy may be complete. So that in giving of ourselves and giving ourselves away to love and to be with others, we're not losing anything, we're gaining joy. Apparently, when I first met my husband, I announced to him, I think I should let you know that I'm not interested in pleasure. I'm interested in joy. He kept teasing me about that for many years. But I knew what I meant, but he said, I think it meant I better marry you or else. I think that's what he thought I meant. But it wasn't that at all. It was just that joy is what we want. Joy we find in the church, in each other, and in Christ. And Christ is with us always. And I have a little poem that you've all heard before, and I have it right here. See, I do write my sermons, many pages. But I like this, and I know that you already know it, but I'm going to read it anyway to finish us off and send us out into the world when we go after this service, knowing that we are protected in every way by God. And it's called the Lorica of St. Patrick. And you'll know it when you hear it. And sometimes it's sung, so Dorothy probably knows it from singing it. Christ be with me, Christ within me, Christ behind me, Christ before me, Christ beside me, Christ to win me, Christ to comfort and restore me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ in quiet, Christ in danger, Christ in hearts of all who love me, Christ in mouth of friend and stranger.